It's funny how life works out. You start with a blueprint, a clear, simple plan. Mine was easy. Fall in love, get married, build a home, maybe have a couple of kids. I wanted the picket fence, the Sunday barbecues, the kind of quiet, unassuming happiness you see in old black and white movies. I never in a million years thought my blueprint would end up including hostile takeovers, billion-dollar contracts, and a divorce so messy it could have been a season finale on a primetime drama. But here we are. My name is Rachel, and this is how I went from being Mrs. Lucas Brooks to being the one and only head of Brooks Construction. It all started, as most of these stories do, with a boy, Lucas Brooks. He was electric. The first time I saw him was a city fundraiser. I was a junior, studying art history of all things, and he was a recent business grad, already wearing a suit that cost more than my semester's tuition. He had this easy smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room, and a laugh that seemed to echo with the sound of old money and boundless confidence. He was the heir to the Brooks construction fortune, a name that was practically plastered on half the skyline of our city. To me, a girl from a quiet suburban town, who paid for college with scholarships and waiting tables, he was like a character from a novel. We fell for each other fast and hard. He loved that I didn't know or care about his family's money. I was fascinated by his world, but I wasn't trying to become a part of it. I just wanted him. Our dates weren't about lavish dinners. They were about late-night drives, finding hole-in-the-wall diners, and talking for hours about everything and nothing. He seemed to crave the simplicity I represented, a respite from the high-stakes world he was born into. His father, Arthur Brooks, was a different story. He was the patriarch, the founder, the titan, a man whose presence filled a room before he even spoke a word. The first time I met him, I was terrified. We had dinner at the Brooks family estate, a place so large I was afraid I'd get lost on the way to the bathroom. Arthur had these piercing blue eyes that seemed to analyze every layer of your being. He asked me about my studies, my ambitions. I remember telling him quite honestly, I just want to build a happy life with your son, Mr. Brooks. A flicker of something I couldn't quite read crossed his... It wasn't disapproval, more like curiosity. Lucas just laughed and squeezed my hand under the table, whispering, "See, Dad? She's perfect. No agenda." We got married a year after I graduated. It was a beautiful, opulent affair that felt more like a state dinner than a wedding. I wore a dress that probably could have funded a small village and smiled until my cheeks ached. And for a while, it was perfect. I slipped into the role of a housewife with ease. I decorated our beautiful home, hosted dinner parties for Lucas's friends, and supported him. My only ambition was to be the best wife I could be. Lucas worked at the company, at least he had a title. Vice president of something. He'd leave in the morning and come home in the evening, smelling of expensive cologne and complaining about boring meetings. It never occurred to me to question it. That was his world, and this was mine. The turning point came about 2 years into our marriage. Arthur had invited us over for Sunday dinner, a weekly ritual. After the meal, he asked me to join him in his study. Lucas gave me a quizzical look and went off to the game room. My heart was pounding. The study was Arthur's sanctuary, a place of power, lined with mahogany shelves, leather-bound books, and blueprints for skyscrapers that now defined our city. "Rachel," he began, his voice calm and direct, "I've been watching you." I swallowed hard. "Oh, you manage this family's social calendar like a military operation. You negotiated with the caterers for your wedding and saved us nearly 20%. You re-landscaped your entire property by sourcing materials directly from quarries I didn't even know existed. You have a mind for logistics and an eye for quality. What are you doing spending your days planning brunches?" I was floored. I never thought of any of that as a skill. It was just what I did. I'm happy, Arthur," I stammered. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Fulfilled? There's a difference. My son, Lucas, is a good man, but he does not have the fire. He enjoys the fruits of the labor, not the labor itself. I see the fire in you." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "I want to offer you a position at the company, not as a favor, as an investment. Start in procurement. Learn the business from the ground up. I think you have the potential to be a great asset." It was an insane proposal. Me? In construction, I knew more about 17th century Italian painters about steel rebar, but the way he said it, the genuine belief in his eyes, it sparked something in me. A little pilot light of ambition I never knew I had. When I told Lucas, he laughed. Not a mean laugh, just an amused, slightly patronizing one. You? Working with all those rough construction guys? Honey, you'd break a nail. Dad's just being eccentric. You don't have to do it. But I want to, I said, the words surprising even myself. I think I'd like to try. And so it began. They gave me a tiny cubicle and a mountain of purchase orders to sort. But Arthur was right. I had a knack for it. I didn't just sort the orders, I analyzed them. I found redundancies. I noticed we were using 3 different suppliers for the same grade of concrete, all at different price points. I spent my night books on supply chain management, on building materials, on contract law. I would visit the construction sites on my lunch breaks, asking the foreman questions, feeling the grit of the dust under my shoes, learning the language of the trade. Within 6 months, I had drafted a proposal to consolidate our supplies, a move that would save the company millions annually. I was so nervous to present it. I walked into the conference room, my hands shaking. The board was all men, all twice my age. Lucas was there, doodling on a notepad, barely paying attention. I laid out my research, my data, my projections. When I finished, the room was silent. Then Arthur, from the head of the table, began to clap. Slowly, deliberately. That, he boomed, a rare, wide smile on his face, is what I'm talking about. That was the day everything changed. I wasn't Lucas's wife anymore, not at the office. I was Rachel Brooks, the woman who was saving the company a fortune. I moved from procurement to project management, then to operations. Arthur became my mentor. He taught me how to read a site plan, how to negotiate with unions, how to anticipate market trends. He was tough, demanding, but he was fair. And for every ounce of effort I put in, he gave me back a pound of knowledge and trust. The more I rose, the further Lucas and I drifted apart. My work was no longer a 9-to-5 job. It was a passion. I'd come home energized, my mind buzzing with ideas about a new zoning ordinance or a breakthrough in sustainable building materials. And Lucas would be on the couch, watching sports. He'd listen with a glazed-over expression. "That's great, honey," he'd say, his eyes still fixed on the screen. "Did you remember to call the caterer for Saturday's party?" It felt like we were speaking different languages. My world was expanding, filled with challenges and triumphs, while his remained static, the comfortable loop of social events and leisure. The easy intimacy we once shared was replaced by a polite distance. We were roommates living in a beautiful house, co-hosts at our own lives. The arguments started small. He resented the late nights I spent at the office. I was frustrated by his complete lack of interest in the business that afforded us our lifestyle. "It's the family business, Lucas," I argue. "Don't you care about its future? About your father's legacy?" "My father's legacy is secure," he'd retort, a defensive edge to his voice. "It's a machine. It runs itself. You don't have to kill yourself over it. We have enough money. Why can't you just relax and enjoy it?" He didn't understand. It was never about the money for me. It was about the building, the creation, the satisfaction of seeing a blueprint turn into a tangible structure that would stand for 100 years. I was building a legacy of my own. A few years later, Arthur's health began to decline. He officially retired, and the board, at his firm insistence, named me chief operating officer. It was a formality, really. I had already been running the day-to-day operations for over a year. Lucas remained a vice president, a title without a portfolio. His presence at the office was sporadic at best. He was a ghost in the machine I now commanded. The silence in our house grew louder. The distance became a chasm, and into that chasm walked my stepsister, Camila. Camila. My father had remarried when I was in college to a woman with a daughter a few years younger than me. We were never close. Camila was all sharp angles and calculated smiles. She had a way of looking at you that made you feel like she was appraising your net worth. She had drifted through life, moving from one wealthy boyfriend to another, always chasing the lifestyle she was entitled to. She reappeared in my life with a phone call out of the blue. Rachie, I'm in town. I heard you and Lucas are doing so well. We should catch up. Her timing was, in retrospect, impeccable. She arrived at our doorstep looking like $1,000,000, all designer labels and flawless makeup. And she directed all of her dazzling attention onto Lucas. Lucas, you must be a genius. She'd gush at dinner. Running this massive company. It's so impressive. Rachel is so lucky to have such a powerful man. I tried to correct her. Actually, I'm the COO, Cam. I handle the operations. She'd just wave a dismissive hand. Oh, Rachie, that's sweet. It's so great you have a little hobby to keep you busy. But we all know who the real boss is. She'd wink at Lucas, and he, starved for the validation he no longer got from me or his father, would puff up his chest and soak it in. It was nauseating. Camila had built a fantasy in her head. Lucas Brooks, the powerful CEO of $1 billion empire, and me, the little woman who played at having a job. It was a narrative that perfectly suited her gold-digging ambitions and Lucas' bruised ego. They were a match made in delusional heaven. I started to notice things. Lucas was on his phone constantly, smiling at texts. He had late meetings that didn't appear on any company calendar. He started to notice things. Lucas was on his phone constantly, smiling at texts. He had late meetings that didn't appear on any company calendar. He started to notice things. Lucas was on his phone constantly, smiling at texts. He had late meetings that didn't appear on any company calendar. He started to notice things. Lucas was on his phone smiling at texts. He had late meetings that didn't appear on any company calendar. He started to notice things. Lucas was on his phone constantly, smiling at texts. He had late meetings that didn't appear on any company calendar. He started to notice things. Lucas was on his phone constantly, smiling at texts. He had late meetings that didn't appear on any company calendar. He started to notice things. Lucas was on his phone constantly, smiling at texts. He had late meetings that didn't appear. I had just come home from closing a deal that secured Brooks Construction's expansion into 2 new states, the biggest achievement of my career. I was buzzing, ecstatic. I walked into our bedroom to find Lucas packing a suitcase. Going somewhere? I asked, my voice lighter than I felt. He wouldn't look at me. He just kept folding his shirts with methodical, jerky movements. Rachel, we need to talk. Schiller's Prenend, he said, finally meeting my eyes. They were filled with a mixture of fear and misplaced defiance. I'm going to do the right thing. I want a divorce. Pregnant. The word hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The word hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The one thing he and I had talked about, years ago, before the business consumed me, was having a family. And now, he was starting one with her. That's when the detachment shattered, and the pain hit me like a physical blow. I had to grip the doorframe to stay upright. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. A cold, hard resolve washed over me. Fine, I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside. Get out. Have your lawyer call my lawyer. He seemed surprised by my lack of hysterics. Rachel, I'm sorry about how this all happened, but you have to understand. We'll be fair in the settlement, of course. With my position, I can make sure you're well taken care of. That was the moment I knew. He had no idea. He and Camila had concocted this entire fantasy, and they were acting on it. They truly believed he held the keys to the kingdom. A bitter, ironic laugh escaped my lips. Your position? I asked, a real humor touching my lips for the first time. Your position? I asked, a real humorless smile touching my lips for the first time. Okay, Lucas, you do that. The next few days were a blur. I threw myself into my work with a ferocity that scared my assistants. Work was logical. It was concrete and steel. It had rules. My personal life was a demolition site. The one call I made was to Arthur. I went to his house and, over a glass of whiskey that burned all the way down, I told him everything. He listened without interruption, his face a granite mask. When I finished, he reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. His hand was old and calloused, the hand of a man who had built things from nothing. "That boy is a fool," he said, his voice gravelly with disappointment. "He was born on third base and thinks he hit a triple. But you, Rachel, you earned your place. You didn't just join this company. In the last 5 years, you have become this company. You are its heart and its brain. He is just the name on the letterhead." He looked me straight in the eye. "Don't you worry. We will protect the company, which means we will protect you." I finally broke down then, tears of grief and gratitude streaming down my face. In the wreckage of my marriage, I had found an unlikely ally, a father figure who saw me for who I truly was. The day of the divorce settlement negotiation was something I will never forget. He looked me straight in the eye. "Don't you worry. We will protect the company, which means we will protect you." I finally broke down then, tears of grief and gratitude streaming down my face. In the wreckage of my marriage, I had found an unlikely ally, a father figure who saw me for who I truly was. The day of the divorce settlement negotiation was something I will never forget. We all met in a sterile, glass-walled conference room at the law firm. I was flanked by my lawyer and, to everyone's surprise, Arthur Brooks. On the other side of the polished mahogany table sat Lucas, his lawyer, and a visibly glowing Camila, who was stroking a small, barely there baby bump with a proprietary air. She looked at me not with malice, but with a kind of triumphant pity, as if I were the poor, discarded thing. Their lawyer started laying out their demands. They were audacious. They wanted half of all assets, naturally. They demanded lifetime alimony for Camila, to support the heir of the Brooks fortune. They wanted the house, of course. And they wanted me to resign from my position at the company, citing a conflict of interest. Camila smirked at me over the table as her lawyer spoke. She was already picturing her life as the new Mrs. Brooks, the queen of the construction empire. My lawyer just listened patiently. When it was our turn, she didn't speak. She simply slid a thick portfolio across the table. "I believe you'll find this illuminating." Lucas's lawyer opened it. His eyes widened as he scanned the footage. He started flipping through, his expression shifting from confidence to confusion, and then to outright panic. "What is this?" Lucas demanded, leaning over to see. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Helen, finally spoke. "That, Mr. Brooks, is a detailed breakdown of the financial and operational control. His salary is generous, but certainly not enough to support the lifestyle to which he has become accustomed, let alone the alimony demands you've presented." Camila's smile faltered. "That's ridiculous. He's a Brooks. He owns the company." Arthur spoke for the first time, his voice a low rumble that silenced the room. "No, young lady. I own the company. Or rather, the primary shares are held in a family trust. A trust whose sole trustee, upon my retirement, is sitting right here." He nodded his head toward me. "Rachel controls the trust, and therefore she controls the company." You could have heard a pin drop. Camila's face went white. She stared at Lucas, her eyes wide with dawning horror. "What is he talking about, Lucas?" You could have heard a pin drop. Camila's face went white. She stared at Lucas, her eyes wide with dawning horror. "What is he talking about, Lucas?" "You talking about Lucas?" He said a raises and annoying. You could have heard a pin drop. Camila's face went white. She stared at Lucas, her eyes wide with dawning horror. "What is he talking about, Lucas? You told me you were the CEO. You told me you ran everything." Lucas was sinking in his chair, his face a blotchy red. He couldn't even look at her. He just stared at the table as his entire fantasy life crumbled around him. Helen wasn't finished. "As for the assets," she said, flipping to another section, "the house you live in is owned by the trust, not by you personally. Your cars are leased by the company. Your credit cards are corporate accounts. Your personal wealth, Mr. Brooks, is limited to a small stipend from a separate personal trust your father established, which, I might add, is not enough to cover the mortgage on a one-bedroom condo in this city." She closed the folder with a sharp snap. "So, to be clear, there will be no alimony. You will not be getting the house. In fact, now that you are no longer married to a senior executive of the company, The trust will begin charging you market rate rent if you wish to remain there, effective the 1st of next month. A rent, I've calculated, that is approximately 150% of your monthly income. Ms. Brooks, she said, turning to me, has graciously agreed not to sue you for infidelity and emotional distress. We consider this a very generous offer.
You will walk away with your personal belongings and your salary provided you continue to show up for work. Though I imagine your position at the company may soon be reevaluated. Camila looked like she was going to be sick. The dream had turned into a nightmare. The powerful CEO she had seduced was nothing more than a glorified employee with a fancy title. The life of luxury she had schemed for was a mirage. She stood up so abruptly her chair screeched against the floor. You lied to me, she hissed at Lucas, her voice trembling with rage. You're nothing. She stormed out of the room without a backward glance. Lucas just sat there, utterly broken. He had lost everything, all for a lie he had told to impress my stepsister, and perhaps to convince himself. The aftermath was swift and brutal.
The moment the money dried up, so did her pregnancy and her love for him. She had packed her bags and disappeared, leaving him with nothing but a mountain of debt and humiliation. He tried, of course. He showed up at my door a month after that, looking gaunt and pathetic. He brought flowers. He cried. He begged for a second chance. His terrible mistake, that he loved me, that he finally understood what he had lost. I listened. I let him say his piece. A younger version of me, the girl who fell in love with his easy smile, might have felt a pang of sympathy. But that girl was gone. She had been replaced by a woman who had single-handedly navigated a corporate behemoth through a recession. A woman who had faced down a room full of lawyers and won. A woman who had rebuilt herself from the rubble of a broken heart. Lucas, I said, my voice calm, devoid of the anger that had once consumed me. You didn't lose me. You threw me away. You traded a diamond for a piece of glass because you were too lazy to see its value. The life you want back doesn't exist anymore. The woman you want back doesn't exist anymore. The woman you want back doesn't exist anymore. I'm not your wife. I am the CEO of Brooks Construction. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a P&L statement to review. I closed the door on his shocked face, and I never looked back. Today, my life is nothing like the simple blueprint I once drew up. It's bigger, more complex, and infinitely more challenging. I live and breathe this company. My family isn't a husband and kids. It's the thousands of employees who depend on me to make the right decisions to keep the company strong. My name isn't just on an office door. It's on the cornerstone of buildings that will shape this city's future. Sometimes late at night, when I'm the last one in the office, I look out the panoramic window at the glittering skyline we built. I see the lights of 1,000 homes, 1,000 lives, all interconnected. I didn't get the picket fence or the Sunday barbecues. Instead, I got an empire. And I learned that the most important thing you can ever build is a life of your own making, on a foundation of your own strength. It's a structure no one can ever take away from you.